talking about Tu B'Av, yesterday's place in the Jewish calendar. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, as Rabbi Splansky read last night, there never were in Israel greater days of joy than the 15th of Av and the Day of Atonement. On these days, the daughters of Jerusalem used to walk out in white garments, which they borrowed in order not to put any to shame who had none. The daughters of Jerusalem came out and danced in the vineyards, exclaiming at the same time, "Young man, lift up your eyes and see what you choose for yourself. Do not set your eyes on beauty, but set your eyes on good family. Grace is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that fears the Lord, she shall be praised." And it further says, "Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates." We're in the month of Av right now, a month of sadness for the Jewish people. But this Shabbat, amongst these words of sadness and this week of sad news, we just heard these words from Isaiah, "Nachamu, nachamu ami," comfort, comfort my people. Rabbi Marmer once told me after one of my first sermons, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the world until I came here for this Shabbat. So instead of the problems with the world, I've decided that this day after Tu B'Av, we should talk about something nice and easy, modern romance. Right? I Googled my date, one woman says, on an online forum, and collected in a recently published book by that title, Modern Romance. She continues with the Google hit she found. According to a weekly New Synagogue newsletter, he and his wife are hosting a Torah class for children the same day as our date. Oh, modern romance. Keeping things nice and easy for us on the Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of comfort, let's switch to some very easy Hebrew from our parashah. Right, so I need your help translating this. I think we've said it a lot of times. So can anyone help me translate Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad? Right, it's an easy one, right? Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, or is it the only God? Is it about, because Eloheinu implies that there's other, for other people, and right? Yeah, it's an easy one, it's good, okay. So then let's go on to the next line that follows in our Torah. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meodecha. Right? So let's keep v'ahavta in a little box for a second. We'll get there in a moment. But b'chol nafshecha is with all of your soul. B'chol levavecha, I skipped that one, is all of your heart. Right? B'chol meodecha is your everything. Right? And the rabbis go and say it's intellect and heart and the way you act in the world. But actually, I think the hardest word is the first word right there, is ve'ahavta, right? Can anyone help me with that one? And you shall love, right? The modern scholarship says, really, there is no word for love in the Torah, though. If you look at ve'ahavta in its context and the way it comes up, it's always about being loyal to. It's always about this, you've fallen into it, now you have to keep up this loyalty. Right, so even in that first word, we find complexity, and we keep things nice and easy for us on the Shabbat Nachamu, right? So let's go back to modern romance. The book is by Aziz Ansari, best known for his stand-up comedy and his role in Parks and Recreation, who wrote it with the sociologist Eric Klinenberg. Before I read a part of this interview, a part of an interview on Freakonomics Radio with Aziz Ansari, I'm going to ask you for a little bit more participation, but silently from your seats. Now, thinking back to your first wife or husband, where did they grow up, and how far was it from where you grew up? Okay, so think for a second. Where did they grow up, and how far is it from where you grew up, and how old are you? What generation are you? Okay, hold these in your mind. This is from that recent interview. This is Aziz Ansari speaking. Whenever I tell people my parents had an arranged marriage, they say, "Wow, that sounds crazy." Well, if you look back at the history in the United States back in the day, someone was like, this guy that lives near me and he's nice and seems like he could provide for me, A lot of the women we spoke to in retirement homes, the way they spoke about their lives, they were like, well, what was I going to do? I was living with my parents. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't have my own career. I could just get married to this guy, and then I could go on with my life and finally become an adult. To me, he says, the craziest statistic in the book, the craziest one that blows my mind the most, is in 1967, there was a study they did where they found 66% of women said they would marry someone that they were not romantically in love with. And now, just the idea that we have all these options of what to do with our lives, and our goal of who we want to find is not, oh, a decent person to settle down with and start a family with. It's, no, we're trying to find the love of our lives. We're trying to find this amazing, elusive thing that just wasn't a thing people had the luxury to look for. Ansari and Klinenberg interviewed elderly Americans in a retirement center. 14 of the 36 elderly Americans said they married someone within walking distance from their childhood home. Ansari discusses a study of people from the 1930s in Philadelphia and says 1 out of 12 people will marry someone in the same building. 1 out of 3 was within a 5-block radius. 80-something%, it was in the same city. You just think about what it's like now, he says. No one marries someone from the same city. You meet people throughout your whole life that are from different parts of the world. You go to college, and that change was something that was actually bigger in modern romance than the technology change or anything else. Just overall change in what used to be called the companionate marriage to the soulmate marriage. The change from the companionate marriage to the soulmate marriage. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you shall love the eternal your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. Now let's take a little self-check, not about your relationship with your spouse, let's not play with fire here, but rather your love of Judaism. Would you say that it is companionate marriage or soulmate marriage? It's easy, it's what I grew up with, because if I didn't love a Jewish God, my bubby would kill me. Right? Or is it your love of Judaism that brought you here today, a soulmate match? You've taken your time, flirted with ethical humanism, with orthodoxy, flirted with Eastern meditation, and then come back home to love Judaism and the Jewish idea of God. Or maybe you were born into another city on the road of religions, and you fell in love with the Jewish God through your own path, or through meeting a Jew. And, by the way, some would say meeting a Jew is meeting Judaism. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that the reason this phrase, V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, starts with V'ahavta, is because so does love your neighbor as yourself. The best way to love God, according to the Baal Shem Tov, is to love your Jewish fellow. And the Maggid of Mezrich laments that we don't kiss the Torah the same way that we kiss our fellow Jews. And you shall love the eternal your God. Maybe the shift from compassionate love to soulmate love is partially responsible for the decline in religious affiliation today in progressive religions. Our wandering has expanded from when we leave the loving homes that supported us until we create a new loving relationship and begin to observe, and you shall teach that to them to your children. And in modern romance, the Jewish heart wanders. Instead of saying, this is convenient for me, almost as quickly as our congregants flip through J-date pages or swipe their thumbs to the left in J-swipe, our minds find comfort in rationalism, in moralism without religion, in ethics beyond God. And now, many Jews are still single, later and later, making it harder and harder when the time comes to have children to teach it to. So, for our comfort, let's turn to imagine what Judaism looks like as a soulmate marriage. In the poetic words of Bachya ibn Pekuda's Duties of the Heart, what does the love of God consist of? The soul's complete surrender of its own accord to the Creator in order to cleave to God's supernal light. Then it will become completely preoccupied with God's service, and have no place for any other thought, sending forth not even one of the limbs of the body in any other service, but drawn by God's will, loosening the tongue but to make mention of God, out of love of God and longing for the eternal. Maimonides' Sefer HaMitzvot makes this more concrete. It says, "And you shall love the eternal your God." The question arises, how one is to manifest one's love for the eternal. Scripture therefore states, "And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. For through this you will learn and come to know God who spoke the world into being." Maimonides explains that through science and philosophy we can draw near to God and truly explore and get to know our soulmate. Maimonides then explains that this commandment also embodies the obligation that we should call upon all of humankind to serve God and to have faith in God. Just as in the case of someone you love, you recount his or her praises, enlarging on them and calling up other people to love them too, so it is that on obtaining true love of God and on coming closer to true understanding of God's essence, that you will undoubtedly call upon the foolish and the ignorant to seek a knowledge of the truth that you have already acquired. In the words of Sifrei, Maimonides continues, "And you shall love the eternal your God," implying you should make God beloved by man as Abraham our father did, as it is stated, "and the souls that they got in Haran." In other words, just as Abraham, being a lover of the eternal, out of the strength of his convictions and of his great love for the eternal, called upon all of mankind to believe in God, so you are to love God to the extent that you will call others to love God. And what is the duty of those that truly love the eternal and are in a soulmate marriage with the eternal? The teacher Nechama Leibovich links this teaching of Maimonides to a passage in the Talmud, which makes it clear that loving God's name means bringing others to love God's name through living the best Jewish life that you can live. One of the problems with modern romance, according to Ansari and Klinenberg, is that we are drowning today in choice. When our 20s and 30s look for companionship, there is a thick market out there of individuals who also have not yet settled. And so too, we know that today, the market of thought and tradition is also thick. The religions of secularism, atheism, agnosticism are just as strong as Eastern meditation, CrossFit, yoga, careerism, or for some, the religion of our non-Jewish partner. And can't we just combine everything? And if we have settled on loving the Jewish God, is it the God of Chabad or Aish who teaches us simple Torah-true Judaism, or Besedek, where some parents belong, teaching of the conservative Jewish God, or the God of the cultural Jew who samples the treif culinary masterpiece? We have lost much in our move from loving God out of convenience. It was easier to be Jewish out of convenience, just to settle. But now for our children and our children's children, we are in the world that is transitioning into modernity, the world of Fiddler on the Roof, where Tevye turns and asks, "Golda, do you love me?" When we say these words, "V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha," let's think about if our Judaism could make this shift to soulmate love. Can we model a Jewish life so that others would want to follow? Can we be in love enough with our own interpretation of Judaism and the Jewish God that we ask others to come along? We've been in this relationship of convenience for so many years, and when we next say, "V'ahavta et Adonai," let us hear God asking us, maybe in the voice of Tevye, "Golda, do you love me?"